Prošle nedelje nismo se videli, mogli ste samo da čitate, a ove nedelje ponovo vraća se video format Utorka kod Vlade. A za ovu epizodu sasvim posebna najava, znate sami verovatno zašto. Posle 26 godina jedan danac u dresu ekipe Jumbo osvojio je Tour de France. Svaka čast i ona sa Vinegaru, a vi izvolite, uživajte u novoj epizodi. Naša priča za danas počela je zapravo već u maju. 20. maja ove godine u gradiću Itigen na severnom obodu Berna dogodio se jedan vrlo interesantan sastanak. Bio je to vanredni sastanak Švajcarske fudbalske lige, organizacije u kojoj učestvuje 20 klubova iz prvog i drugog ranga švajcarskog šampionata, i na tom sastanku mogli smo da vidimo da se pojavljuju u isto vreme dva verovatno najveća problema koja trenutno zahvataju fudbal i ostatak sveta. U pitanju su šta raditi sa većinom ligi koja nema zašto da se bori i sa druge strane koliki probleme opšte pravo glasa predstavlja u današnjem vremenu. Pa hajde vidimo šta se dogodilo toga dana. Verovatno vam je promaklo, ali Švajcarska fudbalska liga od sezone 2023-2024 imaće plej-of, pravi plej-of, onako kako se održava u nekim drugim sportovima na koje nismo navikli. Kada pričamo o fudbalu i plej-ofu, znate i sami, verovatno još od 86. 87. u Engleskoj drugi, treći, četvrti rang igraju play-off za plasman u viši rang takmičenja, treći protiv šestog, četvrti protiv petog, onda veliko finale na Wembleyu, i to je ono što vam je instant asocijacija. Takvi play-offovi postoje širom Evrope, uglavnom u nižim rangovima da bi se popunilo mesto u onim višim, pogotovo u drugim ligama ovih vodećih evropskih zemalja. Neke zemlje na sličan način rešavaju play-off tako što igraju ekipe iznad crte i ispod crte, kao u Nemačkoj, treći od pozadi u elitnom rangu protiv trećeg u drugoj ligi. Isto se prenosi naravno i na niže rangove, ali play-off za određivanje zbivanja u elitnom rangu takmičenja uglavnom nije vezan za Evropu. U nekim od zemalja kao što su severnoameričke države, dakle pre svega MLS liga, pa isto tako i u Australiji i još određenom broju država širom sveta, šampion se određuje play-offom tako što na kraju sezone, na način koji zapravo najviše liči na NFL, igra se po jedna utakmica u svakoj rundi i onda se timovi primiču od nekoga nivoa, kao što je recimo u MLS-u osmina finala pa do samoga finala, i određuje se prvak jednom utakmicom, dakle bukvalno na isti način na koji se sprovodi NFL play-off. Tamo, kao što verovatno znate, postoje i konferencije i mnogo stvari zapravo liči na ono kako funkcionišu američki sportovi, samo što za razliku od ovih ostalih, košarke, bejsbola i hokeja, kao i u američkom fudbalu, igra se samo jedna utakmica, jer jednostavno ritam fudbala je takav da to ne dozvoljava. U mnogim zemljama CONCACAF zone sistem je sličan. U Meksiku se takođe na taj način određuje šampion. U svih 7 država Mezoamerike, dakle ovih centralnoameričkih zemalja na kopnu, od Gvatemale pa dole do Paname, se održava isti sistem. Isto tako i u nekoliko karibskih država, uključujući i Jamajku koja je to uvela od prošle godine. Slično se igra i u Australiji, Novom Zelandu, Papua Novoj Gvineji, u Indijskoj superligi i u nekoliko država Afrike. U Evropi jedina zemlja koja određuje prvaka na osnovu play-offa jeste ona koja je trenutno na dnu svih lista, to je San Marino, 55. od 55 učesnica UEFA. Što se tiče ostalih, naravno, do sada se takve stvari nisu događale. Međutim, čak i ti play-offovi ličili su na nešto što može da se poveže sa fudbalom. Na ispadanje se igra i u evropskim kupovima i u domaćim kupovima. Jeste malo neobično da titulu prvaka može da uzme kao u MLS-u ekipa koja je čak ispod polovine tabele, jer tamo 60% timova koji učestvuju u ligi su u jednom trenutku učestvovali u play-offu. Znate sami da se njima broj ekipa menja iz godine u godinu i samo se dodaju nove. Ali ono što se dešava u Švajcarskoj je zaista novi nivo. O čemu se radi? 20 klubova je selo da razgovara o tome šta će da radi. Predlog je bio dat još nekih mesec i po dana ranije i većina ovih najvećih klubova, Basel, Young Boys, Zürich, Grasshopper, su bili protiv toga. Ideja je da se liga proširi sa 10 klubova, Švajcarska igra sa 10 klubova već skoro 2 decenije, na 12, a onda su se suočili sa jednim ozbiljnim problemom, a to je šta će da radi pola lige. To je ono o čemu smo pričali mnogo puta i o čemu sam ja pisao još pre 9 godina u okviru rekonstrukcije. Jedan od glavnih problema sa ligaškim sistemima današnjice, i to je problem, recimo, koji se baš lepo vidi u premier ligi, gde su vrlo stabilne ove grupe najboljih, najslabijih i onda ostaje ta srednja grupa, čime će se baviti zapravo ti klubovi sa sredine koji ne mogu da ispadnu, a i nemaju baš mnogo šanse da se bore za Evropu. U Švajcarskoj situacija je bila takva da, pošto imaju 4 tima koji idu u Evropu i 2 tima koja idu dole, odnosno 1,5 tim koji ide dole, relativno je mali bio taj srednji deo koji se nije borio ni sa šta. Međutim, ako se liga proširi na 12 ekipa, tu bi se pojavila situacija gde bar 2-3 ekipe bi u martu znale da ne mogu da idu ni gore ni dole i onda mogu da se opuste. Ove sezone, recimo u Švajcarskoj, sa 10 timova bilo je vrlo uzbudljivo, jer pretposlednji u ligi imao preko 40 bodova. Sad, šta je tu problem? Problem je u tome što u Švajcarskoj ligi, kao i u mnogim drugim ligama, uključujući i Srbiju, odluke donose tela koje uključuju i prvoligaše i drugoligaše i svi imaju jednako pravo glasa. Naravno, Bazilu i Young Boysu ne znače proširenja lige baš mnogo, jer oni znaju da su sve jedno najbolji u ligi i da će biti tu. Ok, ove godine Cirih bio prvak, ali znate na šta mislim da će se to vrlo brzo sve vratiti na normalu, a inače Bazil i Young Boys su pokupili sve ostale titule u prethodnoj deceniji. Međutim, veliki broj drugoligaških ekipa u tome vidi priliku da se pomakne u viši rang, da na taj način dobiju priliku da dođu do veće količine novca, jer će onda upasti u deljenje novca sa ovim elitnim klubovima. Za prvu ligu, naravno, mnogo više novaca dobijete. I došlo se do situacije koja je prilično česta u ovim zemljama, uglavnom na istoku Evrope, a to je da je zbog interesa većeg broja manjih klubova elita uskrećena da će veći broj klubova igrati u prvom rangu takmičenja, da se liga povećava na 12 timova. To odmah dovodi do nekoliko novih problema. Jedan od razloga zašto je Švajcarska liga uspela da napreduje i da sa nekog mesta odmah ispod 20. skoči u top 15 u Evropi, gde je provela veći deo ove prethodne decenije, jeste to što imaju ligu od 10 klubova sa 36 utakmica, sa velikim brojem utakmica, sa velikom izjednačenošću. Rekao već, sa 62-3 boda možete da idete u Evropu, a sa 40 ste na ivici ispadanja. Dakle, veliki broj klubova je tu veoma poravnat, čak i kada se desi da neka od ekipa uzme, doživi samo 2-3 poraza u sezoni, svejedno odigra mnogo utakmica i onda nema tu ni blizu onoga broja bodova koje recimo osvajaju Manchester City i Liverpool u Engleskoj, ili da ne pričamo o ovim klubovima po ligama kakva je srpska, gde se sa 100 bodova može ostati bez titula, bez većih problema, ali u krajnjoj liniji znate i sami da je i u Španiji se dešavalo da neko uzme 100 bodova pa da ne uzme titulu. Švajcarci su uspeli da se pomaknu znatno i onda su upali u jedan kraći problem, ispali su iz top 15, znate sami da ulazak u top 15 znači da imate 5 predstavnika u Evropi i da vice šampion igra kvalifikacije za ligu šampiona, i oni su to rešili na taj način što su ove godine izglasali to što su izglasali, i to je onako dosta čudno, jer je ovo bila druga najbolja sezona u istoriji Švajcarske lige u Evrokupovima. Samo su u onoj legendarnoj 12-13 kada je Bazil sa Moom Salahom, Melnenijem, Dragovićem i pola švajcarske reprezentacije od Zomera do Oba Frajda, Štrelera, da ne nabrajam sada, stigao do polufinala Lige Evrope, gde ih je izbacila ekipa Chelsea, ali su oni pre toga izbacili Spurse, izbacili su Zenit, izbacili su Dnipro, prošli su kao prvi kroz grupu Lige Evrope, dakle sjajna sezona Bazela, u kojoj ostali klubovi nisu baš bog zna koliko pomogli. Ova sezona je slična utoliko što je Bazel stigao do prolećne faze, ovi ostali nisu stigli ni dotle. Bazel je bio pobednik svoje grupe u Ligi konferencija, tako da je automatski preskočio jedno kolo, tako da su bili u osmini finala Lige konferencija. 2 tima su ispala i pre grupa, jedan je završio kao posljednji u svojoj grupi, ruku na srce, Young Boys nije imao baš sreće sa žrebom, jer je dobio onako grupu bez elitnih timova, ali sa 3 jaka tima, Manchester United, Villarreal i Atalanta, uspeli su da nakupe 5 bodova, ali to nije bilo dovoljno da prođu dalje ni u Ligu Evrope. Dakle, jedna dobra sezona švajcarske Super lige, da stavimo u kontekst, uzeli su 2 boda manje nego Srbija je uzela preko 9 bodova, što je najbolji učinak u istoriji, a Švajcarci dotle nikada nisu stigli, ali su sa 7,5 bodova skoro ostvarili, kao što rekao, drugi najbolji učinak u zemlji. I u tom trenutku Švajcarska rešava da preseče stvari i da pređe na potpuno drugi sistem. I šta nas sad očekuje od sledeće godine? Hajde prvo da krenemo od ustrojstva lige, dakle, bit će 12 klubova, igraće se dvokružno, 22 kola, onda se liga deli na gornji i donji deo po 6 klubova, to smo već viđali u mnogim zemljama, uključujući i Srbiju, i imaćemo posle toga još po 10 kola i u gornjem i u donjem domu. Ono što je zabavno, nastupa tek u trećoj fazi takmičenja. Dakle, posle 32 runde, 2 najbolje ekipe ulaze u plej-of za titulu prvaka i igraće ga po sistemu koji zaista podsjeća na one sportove koji nisu američki fudbal. Naime, igraće se 3 utakmice, 2 na terenu prva i, ako je potrebno, 3 na terenu lidera, a druga na terenu vice šampiona. Sad, koliko je to u redu da vi imate tokom sezone, kao Cirih ove godine, dvocifrenu prednost, a da onda morate da u 2 utakmice ili 3 odlučujete ko će biti prvak, ne znam šta bih vam rekao, ali svakako će doprineti interesantnosti, a kako se kaže suprotno od doprineti, otprineti osjećaju fudbala koji mi imamo, jer zaista niko od nas ne može da doživi fudbal u našem smislu kao nešto što će da se igra na 3 utakmice. Onda gledamo šta se dešava ispod. Naime, posljednje 12. ispada iz lige, 11. igra baraž sa vice šampionom druge lige i to su prilično standardne stvari, ali najzabavniji ideja zapravo je ona između 3. i 10. mesta. Naime, vi ste se posle 22 kola podelili na 2 grupe. U gornjoj grupi su timovi igrali sa najboljima, u donjoj su igrali ovi slabiji. Međutim, za play-off se opet skupljaju svi zajedno i ekipe od 3. do 10. mesta igraju na ispadanje, 3. protiv 10., 4. protiv 9. i tako dalje. Igraće se 3 runde, pošto je 8 timova, 2 kod kuće i na strani i finale na jednu utakmicu i pobednik toga ide u Evropu. Dakle, 10. može da istera 3. iz evropskog takmičenja time što će ga dobiti u 2 utakmice i još bizarnije, 9. na jednu utakmicu može da izbaci 3. jer je dobio neko crveni karton u 8. minutu i hajde sad snađite se vi u takvoj situaciji. Dakle, gomila odluka koje ne liče na ono što mi zovemo fudbalom, naravno, reakcija navijača je bila potpuni šok, da li je moguće da neko tako nešto donese. Vidjet ćemo, 2023. nije tako daleko, švajcarska sezona je već krenula, dakle, za manje od godinu dana ćemo ih gledati ponovo na terenu i vidjet ćemo kako će ta sezona da prođe. Naravno, pretpostavljam da će ove ekipe koje su iz donjeg doma biti prezadovoljne, pogotovo ovi koji ulaze iz nižeg ranga, jer ove sezone iz Švajcarske niko ne ispada direktno, posljednji igra baraž sa 3. iz druge lige, da bi se popunila ta druga 2 mesta, a prva 2 iz Challenge liga njihovog ulaze automatski u elitu, tako da, eto, recimo, možemo da gledamo ekipu koja je ove godine 3. u drugoj ligi, a sledeće godine sa 10. mesta ode u Evropu kao učesnik lige konferencija. Dosta neobičan splet okolnosti, vidjet ćemo kako će to Švajcarcima uspeti. Ja zaista nisam pristalica tog nivoa, to čak nije ni amerikanizacija, čak ni Amerikanci se toga nisu setili u svojoj ligi, oni imaju vremena da prošire svoj play-off još malo i da ga učine sličnijim, to je da se i tamo igra na 2-3 utakmice, ali ako ni oni nemaju potrebu za tim, ne znam zašto bi neko ovde imao potrebu za tim. Tako da, ovo je možda početak nečega sasvim novog i početak promene fudbala koja je u skladu sa svim onim ostalim promenama fudbala o kojima sam ne tako davno pisao, kada sam pisao o tome kako se fudbal širio na azijska i severnoamerička tržišta zbog novca, jer tamo je, jel te, sada finansijski dominantan deo sveta, ali bi zaista moglo to da nam se svima obije o glavu, a čini mi se da je ovo novi korak u tom smeru. Prema tome, ovo je baš jedan ozbiljan thumbs down. Apsolutno mi se ništa ne dopada ideja sa tim tipom play-offa u fudbalu. Da nastavimo u istom ritmu i da ostanemo u jednoj od onih priča koje su najavljene još u onom davnom tekstu. Idemo na priču o azijskim reprezentacijama u istoriji svetskih prvenstava. Azija je počela da se bavi međunarodnim fudbalom veoma rano. Njen prvi učesnik igrao je još 1938. godine. Reprezentacija Holandske, Istočne Indije, ono što danas zovemo Indonezijom, se takmičila na svetskom šampionatu u Francuskoj i to bez kvalifikacije, s obzirom na to da je njihov jedini rival u azijskoj zoni Japan odustao od takmičenja i to će postati standard u sledećim decenijama u azijskom fudbalu. Indonežani su stigli u Francusku, u Remsu su se sastali sa reprezentacijom Mađarske, izgubili 6:0 i završili kao poslednji 15. od učesnika turnira, formalno 16. je Austrija, ali Austrija dotle već nije postojala kao država već nekoliko meseci nakon Anšlusa. Austrija naravno stigla tamo kao polufinalista prethodnog turnira, to je stigla bi tamo kao polufinalista prethodnog turnira. Odmah posle svetskog prvenstva Indija se plasirala, odnosno posle svetskog rata, Indija se plasirala za svetsko prvenstvo 1950. godine u Brazilu. Međutim, Indijci nisu otišli tamo, postoje razne teorije, jedna od njih je da je problem bio u tome što je FIFA zabranila da se igra bez kopački. Indijska reprezentacija je na olimpijskim igrama 48. slavno nastupila bez kopački, bosi igrači su se sasvim fino čak i nosili prvih pola sata, nisu ni primili gol, ali nisu mogli mnogo bolje od toga, ali vrlo verovatno da je veći problem u tome bio finansijski, jednostavno nisu mogli sebi da priušte odlazak u tim posleratnim godinama, samo 2,5 godine nakon sticanja nezavisnosti, da finansiraju odlazak cele reprezentacije u Brazil. Znate i sami kako se išlo u to doba i u kakvim okolnostima se tada igralo i taj turnir kao i oni 30. je bio takođe imao 13 učesnika umesto planiranih 16, ili veliki broj timova odustao. 54. godine prvi put se jedna azijska reprezentacija kvalifikovala. Južna Koreja je pobedila Japan u borbi za plasman na mundijalu i stigla je i dobila je najtežu moguću grupu sa selekcijama Nemačke i Mađarske i završila sa 3 i Turske i završila sa 3 pobede, sa 3 poraza i to je bilo bar jedno zasluženo učešće. 58. i 62. azijskih reprezentacija nije bilo jer su se nalazile u baražu sa evropskim timovima. Bilo je to interesantno dobro, naime pošto je FIFA već postala nezadovoljna zbog toga što se u Evropi i Južnoj Americi igraju kvalifikacije, a ekipe iz Afrike i Azije dobijaju blanko ulaz na turnir time što njihovi protivnici se po pravilu samo povuku. U kvalifikacijama za 58. inače Izrael, tada je nekoliko reprezentacija iz Evrope, iz današnje UEFA nastupalo u azijskoj ili afričkoj zoni. Izrael je tada osvojio prvo mesto u tim kvalifikacijama zato što su mu se protivnici redom povlačili. Međutim, FIFA je odlučila da ipak to ne može tako i da će morati da igraju dodatne kvalifikacije sa predstavnikom Evrope i Vels ih je pobedio i otišao na mundijal i otišao u četvrtfinale. Velšene ovoga novembra čeka drugi nastup na mundijalima. 62. godine Južna Koreja je osvojila azijsku zonu, međutim tada je već FIFA bila spremna na sve ono što ih čeka, tako da su i predstavnici Afrike i Azije imali razigravanje sa Evropljanima. Južnoj Koreji je dopala Jugoslavija u tom trenutku izuzetno jaka, koja je pobedila lagano 2 puta i na kraju završila u polufinalu mundijala u Čileu. 66. događa se veliki breakthrough za azijski fudbal. Severna Koreja stiže na mundijal u Engleskoj, naravno kao totalni outsider u jednoj dosta teškoj grupi sa odličnim Sovjetskim savezom, sa Italijom, koja je u tom trenutku u jeku one prve posleratne eksplozije fudbala. Italijanski klubovi su od 63. do 9. osvojili 4 titula prvaka Evrope i tu je i bio Čile koji je bio polufinalista prethodnog mundijala. Međutim, Korejci su prvo uspeli da golom u samom finišu uzmu bod Čile u drugom kolu nakon laganog poraza od Sovjeta i onda veliko čudo na Ayerson Parku u Middlesbroughu, Pak Do-ik postiže jedini gol na utakmici. Severna Koreja eliminiše Italiju, ispostavilo se da će 2002. i druga Koreja eliminisati Italiju sa mundijala i odlazi u četvrtfinale gde je u malo napravila novo čudo, naime vodili su 3:0 protiv Portugalaca posle 20 minuta, onda je Eusebio stupio na scenu, dao 4 gola i pobedio ih na Goodisonu. 5:3 je bilo tada za Portugal, ali je Koreja ostavila odličan utisak, kaže legenda da je nekoliko hiljada navijača Middlesbrougha prešlo na drugi kraj Engleske da ih bodri u toj utakmici sa selekcijom Portugala. Posle toga 70. je Aziju predstavljao Izrael pre nego što će Izraelci biti izbačeni iz Azijske konfederacije, pa će onda lutati i igrati na raznim mestima, uključujući Okeaniju, pre nego što ih početkom 90. prihvati UEFA za stalno. i dotle još uvek azijske reprezentacije, osim tog uspeha 66. nisu ostavile dubok trag, nisu igrale na sledećim turnirima, 74. 78. i 82. stiže Kuvajt, odnosno 78. su igrali Iranci u onom posljednjem nastupu pre revolucije, bilo je to zlatno doba iranskog fudbala, oni su uzeli 3 uzastopne titule prvaka Azije, 82. stiže Kuvajt i to je jedno jako čudno doba, naime tada su azijske reprezentacije imale višeslojne kvalifikacije, odvojeno istok-zapad, znate sami kolika je Azija i da se većina stvari tako mora igrati jer jednostavno prevelike su razdaljine i Kuvajćani su stigli na mondijal, imali su jako tešku grupu sa Englezima, Francuzima i Česima i nisu tu mogli ničemu da se nadaju, ali generalno to doba je postalo specifično po tome što su se non stop menjale ekipe i to su uglavnom bili one hit wonderi. Naime, 86. igrao Irak, 90. su igrali Ujedinjeni Arapski Emirati, toga se vjerojatno najbolje sećate, igrali su s Jugoslavijom u grupi i lagano izgubili. Koreja se ustalila od 86. Južna Koreja od 86. igra na svakom turniru i tek negde od 94. kreće prava eksplozija azijskog fudbala, naime tada su pobedili momci iz Saudijske Arabije, reprezentaciju Belgije, plasirali se u drugu fazu takmičenja u grupi sa Holandijom i Belgijom, uzeli su 6 bodova, tu Maroko je bio 4. učesnik i onaj čuveni gol sa d.o.o. i dan danas se prepričava i od tog trenutka Azija pravi veliki iskorak. Dotle se pričalo o tome da je Afrika sledeća super sila, međutim ispostavilo se da su azijske reprezentacije ostvarile dosta bolje rezultate nego afričke u posljednje vreme. 98. je prvi put Azija imala 4 predstavnika, što im nije donelo prolazak grupe, Japanci su se prvi put plasirali i oni će od tada stalno da igraju i tu se već formira jedno jezgro 4 reprezentacije koje će se naknadno pridodati Australija kao peta kada sredinom 2000-ih postane članica Azijske fudbalske konfederacije. Od tada Japan, Južna Koreja, Saudijska Arabija, Iran, Australija su reprezentacije koje konstantno učestvuju na turnirima. U periodu od 94. do danas niko od njih nema manje od 5 nastupa. Koreja je nastupila na svim turnirima i to redom su se poređali 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Ono što je bitno to je da jako mali broj ostalih reprezentacija uspeva da napravi iskorak. Kinezi 2002. i Korejci, to sa Borom Milutinovićem, i Korejci, Severni Korejci 2010. na onom čuvenom turniru na kojem su lagali koji je rezultat utakmice za svoju javnost posle utakmice, ali ovi ostali se konstantno pojavljuju i na ovih prethodnih nekoliko turnira, evo na prošlom su igralo svih 5 tih reprezentacija, na onom pre toga je izostala reprezentacija Saudijske Arabije, na ovom koji pred nama opet se svih 5 kvalifikovalo, samo će im biti pridodat naravno i domaćin selekcija Katara. Umeđu vremenu, Azija na 5 turnira 3 puta prolaza grupe, dakle svaki drugi turnir neko prođe dalje, s tim što je naravno 2002. bila najuspešnija, sećate se toga, Korejci su doduše uz malo gledanje kroz prste kao domaćinima od strane sudija stigli do polufinala, Japan je prošao grupu, 2010. su opet Korejci i Japanci prošli grupu, 2018. Japan je bio uspešan u svojoj grupi i vodili su dugo protiv Belgije 2-0, bili na pragu ogromnog iznenađenja. Dakle, Japanci su 3 puta prošli grupu, svaki put izbacili po neke Evropljane, jednom Ruse, jednom Danci, jednom selekciju Poljske. Što se tiče Koreje, Koreja je u tom slavnom nastupu 2002. godine u grupi ostavili iza sebe Poljsku i Portugal, a onda redom i Španiju i Italiju, a onda su uspeli da izbaci i Grke 2010. godine u grupi, dakle očigledno je da azijske reprezentacije sve više napreduju. Jedna od zemalja Azije koja je u centru pažnje jeste selekcija Irana, koja jedina od svih ovih zemalja nema ligu koja je prepuna stranaca i na taj način pokušava da podigne kvalitet fudbala, već kroz domaće igrače i povremeni uvoz igrača uglavnom sa ovih prostora. O tome kako funkcioniše iranski fudbal u ovom trenutku kada je po lošem na glasu, jer znate i sami da je bila priča o tome da će selektor Dragan Skočić biti smenjen na nekoliko meseci pred mondijal, to se nekako dešava stalno ovim selektorima sa ovih prostora. Pričam sa Arijom Alahverdijem, jednim od članova grupacije Gol Bezan, glavni izvor na engleskom jeziku informacija o iranskom fudbalu. Gol Bezan, toplo vam preporučujem da pratite njih i na Twitteru i na YouTubeu i da slušate njihove podcaste ukoliko vas zanima kako funkcioniše iranski fudbal i iranska reprezentacija. Dakle, slušamo razgovor sa Arijom Alahverdijem. So, Arya, these past couple of weeks have been really hectic in Iranian football, and not for the good reasons.
Yeah, no, we've had issues, obviously, with the head coach who was initially relieved from his duty, was sacked, and then he was brought back by the federation. And there's no really any guarantees right now for him, because there's also a presidential election for the president of the IFF, Iran Football Federation. That will be in August 30th, and then whoever comes in then could potentially also dismiss Skocic from his role, depending on if all board members agree. And at this moment in time, I think it's difficult to see any kind of unity in this team, because of the players, of course, dividing from social media. They had some disagreements, let's just say, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of unity in this team at this moment in time. For our World Cup preparation, the way it's going, it's not looking good at the moment, compared to our opponents in Group B, who are preparing quite well, and they're doing well in terms of getting good friendly matches. We've only had one game against Algeria since our last qualification game against Lebanon, so I don't see how we can be well prepared for this World Cup from now. Of course, September we'll have one more camp. We have to play 2 friendly games in that camp. Whether that actually happens, it's hard to say with this federation, but we'll see. And I think only the federation have themselves to blame. Of course, the players, the coaches have to take responsibility as well for a lot of this, but I think a lot of it comes down to the governing body of football in Iran, and yeah, it's not looking good just now.
So even if Iran changes national team coach, they will have basically a couple of days to get prepared for the September window, and then to play 2 games, and then the next time they see each other, they will basically be in Qatar.
Yeah, that's it. So they had this debate just after the last qualification game is Lebanon. People were saying, should he be sacked now, because we're 8 months out and we can use this time wisely to bring in a new coach, let's just say, to prepare. But even then, I think it was too late to sack a coach. It doesn't make any sense, because you're not giving that new coach any time to do anything, to implement anything. The federation initially they brought in Skocic on a short-term basis. They didn't bring him in for a long-term. They had the vision that he maybe wouldn't have done as well as he did in qualification, but he ended up doing really well, winning all the games pretty much, only losing to South Korea and drawing against South Korea at home. And because of that success he had in terms of results, performances weren't great, but results were really good. Because of that, I think the federation felt pressure to keep him by the media, by themselves even, and they didn't take that initiative to maybe bring in someone who's at a better quality or better level. That's not to say that he should be sacked anyway. I'm not saying he should have been sacked, but I think their vision from the beginning was to actually get rid of him and then bring in someone else, but he exceeded expectations. So because that didn't happen, they couldn't sack him earlier on. He stayed on, and then I think the quality of the team had decreased quite a lot when we reached those kind of games against South Korea. And I think at this moment in time, it's too late to sack him.
So basically, getting Skocic was a bit of a surprise to start with. I mean, Iran is not strange to hiring Croatian managers, not at all. They had 5 of them already, and some of them were very successful. But Skocic is not exactly the type you go for, because he's never managed the top club in Croatia. He's never managed even top club in Iran. He's done okay job with a couple of clubs there, but it's not like he was coaching Esteghlals or Persepolises or even Tractors. He's been doing job in small clubs.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time in Iran. I think he coached. Obviously, he coached in Croatia for a little bit. He also coached in Slovenia, if I'm not mistaken, and from there he's also been in other places in the Middle East. But of course, he's been in Iran, teams like Malavan, Fulad, Sanat Nafta Abadan, and also coached in the second tier of Iranian football with Khune, which he was successful with. He got them to the FA Cup or the Hasfi Cup final against Persepolis. Lost that game, but was quite successful with them. Okay, he was coaching in the second tier. It's not particularly good for anyone to really coach there, but he did. And I think he's not the kind of coach that you would expect this team to coach at a high level, or Iranian football wouldn't necessarily pick him as the head coach of the national team. But he was brought in for this reason, that when we were under Mark Wilmots, we had to bring in someone new, because there was a very short amount of time. We lost games to Iraq and Bahrain. We were in kind of desperate need of someone just to kind of turn it around for us and just get us through these qualification games, because this was the early qualification games. It wasn't even the last stage of qualification that we had lost 2 games in. And he came in because he was experienced in Iran. He knew the players quite well, knew Iranian football quite well. Everyone was pretty much expecting an Iranian coach to come in at that point, maybe Ali Dai, maybe Amir Qalinoui, for example, but they stuck with a European coach who had Iranian football experience. They brought Dragan Skocic. Again, as I mentioned, I think they only really brought him in for that reason, to kind of just get us over the line. They didn't expect him to do as well as he did, and it ended up keeping him for this World Cup now. So I think it was and it wasn't a mistake to bring him in at the beginning, but I think it was maybe it backfired a little bit in terms of how well he actually ended up doing in terms of getting the results. I think they kind of were a little bit shocked by that, the federation, and they didn't take their initial decisions into hand further on down the line. So I think Skocic is done well for himself. He should be proud of himself for what he's done, because it's a very difficult job to go into, from coaching in the league second tier of Iranian football to coaching national teams. A big step up. He should be proud of himself for what he's done. But I don't think anyone expected him to do as well as he did.
He had a really big shoes to fill, because before him and before Wilmots there was a huge reign of Carlos Queiroz. He did 100 games for Iran. He took them to 2 World Cups. He did really, really well, and the team looked like it never looked before, basically.
Yeah, no, he's the longest reigning coach we ever had in our national team, and the 8 years he spent with us, it's produced a lot of football talents moving out to European leagues. That's one of the things that happened under his reign. People who don't like him, they can really not argue about that. He did push for more Iranian players to go to European leagues, and that's happened, and it's still happening. It's growing, and that's really enhanced our football. Even in the Iranian league, it's given the players in the Iranian league a little bit of impetus to go and say, can I get myself to Europe? Whereas something before him, maybe a lot of the players were more content just to stay in Iran and play their football in the Iranian league. Not only that, I think the 2 World Cups we were at, yes, we didn't get the results that we maybe always wanted. We didn't do badly in 2018. I thought we did really well. We got unlucky to lose to Spain. He got a lucky goal, very lucky goal. I mean, it was basically a deflection that I don't think Diogo Costa even meant to score against. And we had a goal disallowed in that game as well for offside against Portugal. We were basically 1 kick away from winning the game. If things had gone our way, we probably would have won both games, And of course, against Morocco, we got a lucky a lucky goal. We were lucky in that game to win, but I think, had things gone our way, we could have beaten Spain and Portugal as well. So, I think overall, Queiroz's reign was very important for our football. Whether it was good or bad, that's for everyone to have their opinion. I thought it was very good for our football. I think it was successful, and it made us better than what we were before he joined. So that's all you can really ask of a coach.
So how do you see the strength of the squad compared to 2018? Because before the 2018 World Cup, Iran was very in a very good shape. They had many good players in form. At this moment, it seems that some of them are not in the same form as they were before. And I think that there is a huge difference in quality before the attacking part and the defending part of the team.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. Some of the players, they lost form. Some of them actually have gained form. Players like Taremi, who, when he was in 2018 World Cup, he wasn't even playing in Europe. He was playing in Qatar still. He was still not even in Europe. So players like him, now he's progressed so far in his career. So he's one of the players who's actually developed along a lot. There are some players who have regressed for sure. Players like Jahan Bakhsh, who his career has very much taken a back step since he left Brighton. He went to Feyenoord, and I think he made the right choice to go to Netherlands again and play his football in the Eredivisie, but it hasn't really worked out for him on an individual basis. His club's done really well. Feyenoord have really done really well. They got to the Conference League final, but himself personally, I think he can't be too happy with how he's done. But hopefully he was really good for us in qualification. So that on a personal level, that's still important for him that he's doing well in qualification.
Yeah, the players have been scoring way more goals now than they have been scoring heading to 2018. I mean, for Iran, not for their clubs.
No, for the clubs, yes, some of them really haven't been performing as well. It could be down to a number of things, again, it could be down to what is going on in the national team. It maybe isn't. It really just could be on a personal level. The players are not working as hard in training, or they're not developing their careers properly, not making the right decisions. Maybe you can bring up people like Izzatullahi, who is one of our most important players. Of course, he had many injuries, even leading up to the 2018 World Cup, but maybe hasn't made the best career choices. Maybe he has. Maybe financially speaking, it's been good for him, but in terms of developing his career, not the best. Defense is the same. We've had a lot of issues there. Pro Ali Ganji was one of our most important players under Carlos Queiroz's reign. He hasn't really been existent, over the last couple of years, just because of injuries and, playing his trade in China. Hasn't really been under the radar as much. Obviously, that's allowed players like Hossein Kanani to come through, and Khalid Zadeh to come back, since he was pretty much blacklisted by Carlos Queiroz, and Majid Hosseini is now still in Europe. So yeah, there's been a lot of shift in all kind of aspects of the team. Even guys like Milad Mohammadi, who again was very important for as a left back. He played his when he was at Ghent. He was one of the most important players for them as well. But his career has definitely regressed since going to Greece in AEK Athens. So yeah, there's been that kind of mixture of up and down between the squad.
So how much does the strength of Iranian league help? Because we are blessed to watch a lot of Asian football in Balkans. We can watch Asian AFC Champions League. We can watch AFC Cup. We we can watch Asian qualifiers as well. So we see that a lot of good clubs play in Iranian league. We saw that Persepolis has played twice in Champions League finals. That does it produce enough good players for the national team?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's always produced good players for the national team. Most of these players have played in the Iranian league. Maybe a couple haven't, like Salman Ghodus, for example, played in Sweden. But most of the players have played in Iranian league, and they've moved to Europe, for example. The only issue with the Iranian league really is the standard of football when it comes to just playing against teams who are mid-table and lower table. Of course, teams like s01e are always going to have good teams, always going to have good players, but teams like Paycon and can't even name any other teams. NASA, Jim Mozander, all these teams are just kind of mid-table, not really that impressive. The quality isn't very good there, and it does affect the rest of the teams as well because they're not really playing against good opposition. And a lot of these teams are not really well coached either. They just aren't. That's just my opinion. I think the coaching out in Iran isn't particularly good.
Yeah, people from Balkans often complain when they move to Iran to play.
Yeah.
On tactical level, the league is very poor.
Well, you look at, if you ever watch the Persian Gulf Pro League matches, you'll see like very little time is the ball in midfield. Most of it is passed in the defense, and then can we get it to the strikers as soon as possible? There's not really anything in between. There's some teams who have that. s01e last season showed a little bit of that. There are some elements of it, sure, but for the majority, the midfield zone is very underutilized in Iran. That's probably one of the biggest criticisms I have of the Iranian league is we don't really produce midfielders. Even if you look at the current national team, we only have really maybe 3 or 4 quality midfield. And when I say the word quality, I mean like quality for the Iranian national team. Players like Saeed, of course, very good player. Ali Karimi is still playing in Kayseri Sport back this season. Ahmad Nourahi now he's moved to the UAE. I wouldn't really consider him a quality player, but he's obviously someone who works really hard and gets in the team quite regularly. But there's not really that many quality players. Obviously, like guys like Omid Ibrahimi, Ehsan Hoysafi, they're a little bit older. They've obviously got some quality, but they didn't really become anything special in their careers. And I think a lot of that is down to the lack of the element of care given to the midfield zone in Iran. You look at the young players we have, players like Khoda Bandelu, Yasin Salmani, they're very talented players, but how far are their careers going to go? Because that midfield position in Iran is very underutilized. So how much are they going to improve as a player in that league?
So I have another question about Iranian league because Iran has really been underwhelming in youth competitions compared to what people might expect from a country which is football mad, which has long football tradition, and it's 100 million people there. So in youth competitions, there was that quarterfinal of under-17s a few years ago, and one of the guys has made it to the national team by now. But it's really not enough compared to what we might expect.
Yeah, is that one where it was like Iran against Germany and Canada? Yeah, you're right. Only Alayar Saad has made this national team. He's playing in Hull City just now. Really, a lot of those players like the Tosh Shariati, Muhammad Sharifi, a lot of them haven't really progressed their careers. Of course, there's guys like Younes Telfi, who was playing in Croatia quite recently, but even him, he's struggled, had a lot of injury issues, and right now he's a free agent. So that team was very successful. They had a very good coach, Abbas Chamanian, who really wanted to stamp down his approach to how they play. He, from what I've been told, really wanted them to play a certain way. He wanted them to be a really strong counter-attacking team, win the ball back really quickly. Can we go and score goals as fast as possible? And he spent 2 to 3 years just training on that with that team constantly and honing down that tactic. And the players would be able to perform it almost with their eyes closed because they were so well tuned with this tactic by the head coach. Whereas I feel like, as I say, that kind of level of detail is limited in Iran. The young players can develop that, have a lot of time, but I think when you get to the senior level, that kind of level of detail and care to keep producing a certain style of football on a consistent basis, it kind of goes out the window because a lot of it comes out the results and money, and are we getting can we get the best players? Can we get players who are very experienced, who can bring in a lot more shirt sales and all these kind of things? And I think this is the problem that Iranian football has, is they rely on external factors to encourage how they play the game. So I think it's a problem. They have to figure out. I hope that the next generation of young players are going to be in the national team, but that's not guaranteed just now.
Do you think that perhaps a huge Iranian diaspora is underutilized? You mentioned Saman Ghoddos. We watch him in Swedish league. We've been watching him in Premier League as well. But apart from him, Iran has 4 million people worldwide at least, right? So we would expect them to have many more players coming from abroad, coached in Germany, in Sweden, and in places like that.
Yeah, no, it's a good observation for sure. Come back to Carlos Queiroz, he spent a lot of time actually looking at players from abroad, bringing in players from Sweden, players like Omid Nazari, who played in the Swedish second tier, I think it was. And, there are a lot of players who came in. Steven Betashour from the US, Daniel Davari from the German Bundesliga for a little while. He also played in the second Bundesliga. There were players who came in under his reign. A lot of them weren't particularly impressive. Daniel Davari was good by all accounts. He was playing in the Bundesliga. He played against Bayern Munich, was quite good. But when he came to the national team, wasn't particularly impressive. It could be down to the communication. He didn't speak Farsi. I think that's very important. You're saying there are 4 million Iranians living abroad, but how many of them can actually speak Farsi? That's not a criticism. That's just my opinion. And I think, yes, in today's game, a lot of those national team players can speak English, and the communication isn't a problem. So maybe it's good time to start looking back at that, and can we bring in more of these diaspora? But I think we aren't really producing that many players abroad. There are players like Tafazoli, who was playing in the championship and also was in the League One as well at some point in his career. He's someone who wasn't particularly impressed by Queiroz. He wasn't so impressed by him, wasn't brought in. There's not really that many others. There's Dennis Eckert, who's just moved to, if I'm not mistaken, in Belgium. Is it Saint-Gilloise? Is that how you say it? I can't remember how you say it. Yeah. Yeah, but he's like quarter Iranian. So, how does he get his passport? These kind of things, the passport situation, the bureaucratic things also come into it. So we'll see what happens, maybe in the future.
It's a really interesting thing, because when you look at the career of Carlos Queiroz in Iran, it really reminds me of what Jürgen Klinsmann has done in the United States. A lot of the moves are really similar. So in this World Cup, Iran will play against United States again after 24 years.
Yeah.
One of the two World Cup victories was against the Americans. They will play Wales, which is a really great tournament team. They have done really well in 2016, then in 2020, and it will play England as one of the tournament favorites. So it's a tough group, but it's easier than 2018, because back then it was two huge teams in a group, and nowadays there is a place to go by with England, supposedly.
Yeah, tough group. England are the favourites for sure. They're gonna try and get that first spot. I think they're even gonna try and go for the title. For the World Cup title. So I think they have their objectives, they have their ambitions, and they're a very strong team. So I think anyone who plays against them is going to have a difficult time. Iran. I
suppose you're not a big fan, since you're Iranian living in Scotland. So obviously.
No, I mean, for me, I think the English national team is good. I don't have any issues with them. I think being from Scotland, yes, there's some kind of little bit of grudge, of course, with them, but I'm not so fanatical about it, But no, you're right. I think the English national team are a very controversial team. And they've always been a very controversial team. But I think they're a really, really strong team. So I think that anyone who plays against them is going to struggle. The US national team is a team that has very young players, as you said, playing all over the world, a lot of diaspora as well. Whether they can be successful in this World Cup is tough to say, because US hasn't been to a few World Cups now, and it's also difficult to say because in qualification they were quite poor. It wasn't a good qualification for them. So how much are they going to be? How impressive are they going to be in this World Cup? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's kind of difficult to really put your finger on it. Whereas Wales are a very successful team by all accounts. They've been successful over the years. They got to a Euro semi-final. Of course, they didn't qualify to the World Cup, but they've been doing quite well overall as a country. So I think guys like Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey are going to try and carry this team, and they've got a lot of experience. So we'll see how they do. But I think Iran, in my opinion, on their best day, when they have good preparation, should be beating USA and Wales, in my opinion. Whether you can disagree with that, I think we should be beating USA and Wales on our best day. But without that preparation, without our team being united, it won't be as easy as we would expect it to have been if we were prepared well.
Yeah, historically, any Asian team trying to go through to the next phase of the World Cup had to go through over one of European or more European sides. If you have to choose, I suppose that Wales is not a bad choice of a team to beat.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think again, when we're coming up to the Ukraine and Scotland game, Ukraine looked very impressive, and I actually thought Ukraine would qualify. I thought they were going to qualify because they looked very good against Scotland at Hampden, but Wales beat them. And I thought, as I said, I thought Ukraine looked very, very, very impressive, and I wasn't expecting them to lose at all, like to Wales. But Wales looked comfortable. Yeah, they got a little bit lucky as well, but they won. And to me, that's worrying because they're a team that looked very organized, very, very, very organized. And even though they lost their coach, Ryan Giggs, he's not in charge anymore. They have the caretaker who's now their head coach. Even that kept them together, which again, it shows unity. It shows that they're a very united team. So Iran not having that is a big, big, big problem, I think, because Wales are well prepared for sure.
And I suppose mentally wise, they will be really up to it in Qatar. Whereas with Americans, my feeling is that they are trying to get the best of themselves for 2026, when they will play at home and be one of the teams considered to be dark horses. And this is a bit too early for them. So I suppose there is a chance there.
Yeah, there's a chance we could beat USA for sure. I think, of course, with the game being, is this our last game? I think it is against the USA. Yeah. I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So with that being our last game, of course, it comes down to, it could be very important because, we have to beat them. We have to win that game so we can get to the next round. So I think there's going to be a lot of stakes. But I think the US, the one thing that they have in their favor is they've got this youth and this passion to develop their game, and we have that as well. But I think the US have shown that they keep wanting to bring in young players, and they have this belief in young players. And I think when you have the trust in these players, they're going to produce for you. But there's also a caveat, because they're also inexperienced. So how much are they going to be able to give you in the difficult parts of the competition? So we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I think Iran, as I said, with our quality, our strikers, we should really be beating USA, because they don't have a particularly strong defense. But it's not easy to say that because, again, USA, despite being bad in qualification, they have very good players playing in Barcelona, all over the Premier League, whereas we don't have that. We only have one player in the Premier League. We don't have any players in La Liga, so we can't really say that we're automatically going to beat them.
It is really difficult to have any expectations of the Americans because the most of the time they play tournaments at home, and this time they will be on the other side of the globe. But then they will be playing in Iran's very neighborhood. It's basically home ground to Iran, just across the Gulf. So how important will it be for Iran to play there?
It's massive. I think there's going to be a lot of Iranians there. I think there will be also a lot of there's also a lot of Iranians in Qatar anyway. So it's basically going to be a home crowd. I'm not expecting us to be, the only. There's going to be Americans there as well, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's going to be massive for us. This was the only World Cup, in my opinion, that we should not have missed out on, because if we missed out on the Qatar World Cup, we've missed out on a massive opportunity. If we play in Brazil or Russia, of course it's still good to be there, but it's not a home crowd. There's not always that many Iranians. There was, but not as many as there could be in Qatar. So there's the home advantage potentially could be on our side.
Plus, there's climate because many of Iran's players were born just across the Gulf. Taremi is from the seaside, right? So some other guys are from southern Iran. Basically, that's the same climate.
No, you're right. That could help. I think the Persian Gulf, as we call it, that kind of region. We have a lot of people in that. Like players like Taremi, players like Mehdi Qaidi, who's now playing in UAE. Whether he gets called up or we don't get called up, we will see. But a lot of players in that region. But it is in November, so I don't think it'll be. I actually don't think it'll be as hot as people think it's going to be. I think it's going to be hot, but I don't think it'll be like scorching weather. I think most of the players, even playing in Europe, players playing in Spain, like Amir Abedzadeh playing in Ponferradina, that heat is not that dissimilar to the November Qatari weather, for example.
Yeah, the 2014 World Cup was played in Brazil. They played in tropics, so it can't be much different to that. So at the end, I just have a couple of questions about the Asian football as a whole. Do you think that Asian football has progressed a lot in this century with so many teams passing through group stages? I mean, it's been 5 teams since 2002. And do you think that the way the qualifiers were set were helping? Because nowadays we have a top 5 teams in Asia who consistently go to the World Cups. And do you think that it was enabled by the way the qualifiers have been organized with these 2 groups at the end, with 10 or 12 teams being consistently there?
I think the qualification format hasn't really changed that much. I don't think it's changed too much since the last World Cups. But as a whole, Asian football has definitely improved. Even teams like Hong Kong and Vietnam and Cambodia, even these countries are improving their games. We see guys like Keisuke Honda coaching Cambodia. All these are improving, and it's only going to be better for Asian football as a whole. Whether that's from grassroots level or the national team, everything is looking to improve. I think it's good. There's a lot of money being invested in it as well. Qatar, of course, is now massively investing in their football. UAE similarly. China, Japan as well, of course, always going to be investing in their game. so that's good as well. But also, I think coming to the national team level, teams like Japan, I think there's no doubt they've got quality all over their team. South Korea is the same. But the question now is, as you're saying, how much can they go out and start competing against other continents? Like, can a team like Japan comfortably beat a team like Wales, for example? I think they could, but how good do they have to be to consistently get to that level? Because Wales have players in the Premier League, they have players in the Championship, and those players are getting high-level football all the time, whereas Japan, the J League isn't too bad, but it's not like the players are getting high level. So now it's about how can we enhance high-performance football in these countries. Because I think from grassroots level, maybe barring Iran, because the grassroots in Iran is shocking, but a lot of these countries are doing quite good on a grassroots level. So how can they start to enhance that, to make that be redeveloped into high performance? So I think there's still a couple of at least another decade to go for that to happen.
The thing about Japan is that when they progress at the World Cup, and it's happened 3 times already, they always beat at least one decent European side, because they beat Poland to the last in the last World Cup. They beat Denmark in 2010. They beat Russia in 2002. So it is possible.
Yes, no, it is possible, but as I said, it takes time, because there's, like, for example, the Asian Champions League, in my opinion, is a good competition. It's very good. They always have strong quality teams competing, but I don't see that the winner of the Asian Champions League ever doing anything, for example, in the FIFA Club World Cup, because the quality difference is massive. Some of these teams in Europe are training in maybe not always in the best facilities. Some of them aren't, but they're guaranteed at least a high standard of coaching. And I think coaching comes down to maybe just the AFC. How can you compare the UEFA coaching badges to the AFC coaching badges? Is there a big difference there? Probably there is. I think that could be a big development point for Asian football. Is the coaching, can it get better? Can the AFC badges get up to the standard of the UEFA ones? Maybe.
So Arya, thank you for this conversation. It will be very good to have an intercontinental guest for the first time on my podcast, and I hope we'll talk again sometime around the World Cup.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that, Vladimir. And of course, I'm happy to be on, and hopefully we can have you on our podcast as well. And appreciate it.
Nadam se da je ova prva interkontinentalna epizoda Utorka kod Vlade bila zabavna i da ćete biti sa nama i za 7 dana kada budemo imali mnogo zabavnih sadržaja za vas. Ovako će ići sve do svetskog prvenstva. Ostanite uz Utorak kod Vlade.